few things have such a beautiful portamento, you know. Many of my friends that have been to the studio pre-COVID, when I played it to them, I was telling them on the telephone, "You got to come and listen to it," and they were like, "Oh yeah." Their jaws dropped down. I was like, I told you.
In collaboration with Zoom, the makers of the Q2N 4K camera.
Hi Martin, welcome to MIDI Talk. My name is Simone. I am from Audio Modeling. We are the makers of the SWAM instruments and Camelot, the live performance application. We are doing this live podcast, meeting every time different artists that can share their experience and their relationship between their work, the technology. So we would like to know more about you. And we are glad that you are here. And I would like just to start with the question, if you could introduce yourself and talk about your background and how did it started? If you started with technology or if you started with regular music training or study. So please let us know.
Well, it definitely wasn't normal. I've had no musical training in my life, apart from, you know, the odd music lesson at school when I was young. It's been a feel it out situation for me musically. I remember when I was first interested in music was when I was about 6 or 7 years old, something like that, when I used to be really interested in the melodies of the cartoons I used to watch on the TV. And I remember my brother buying me my first little keyboard. It was a Casio Tone. It had little rubber buttons on it, and I was able to replicate the melodies from my favorite TV shows. And I was like, wow, that's kind of got a little bit hooked on it. And as I got a little bit older, my parents got me a bigger keyboard, which in fact I found 2 of and bought them for my children, obviously for myself. And it even like playing the demo off that has super music memory for me. And I remember, you know, being able to like replicate Axel F by Harold Faltermeyer. I think everybody used to play that on their keyboard when they first start out. Definitely people of my age anyway. And then as I got a little bit older and interested in computer games and stuff, I remember how I got it. I used to have a BMX bike. And I had mag wheels, the plastic wheels with. It
was my dream. I never get it.
Yeah, well, I think the bike didn't originally. It had normal metal spokes. Then I swapped my brother's like one of those TV game machines. Beep,
yeah.
Beep, for the plastic mag wheels. I got into a lot of trouble. But then I had the mag wheels, which I then swapped for a Commodore 64. So I had the Commodore 64 computer, and the music on the video games was just brilliant. As we know, the SID chip's been used in applications since, and even today, it's a really, you know, classic sound, the SID chip. And I remember playing a video game called Delta, where it was like a shoot 'em up game, and the music was written by a really famous video game composer called Rob Hubbard. He did lots of video games, most of the big ones. And he did this 4 mono channel synth loader thing where you could change the beats on one channel, you could change the bass, you could change the chords, you could change the melody. And I used to sit for hours just not playing the game, just changing the bass line, and just experiencing the different ways you can have, you know, different sections of music that are in tune with each other playing, and, you know, whatever, you could mute them as well. So that went on for quite some time. So I used to love following computer and video games composers like Rob Hubbard. There was some amazing guys from Scandinavia called Maniacs of Noise. They were so talented. Eventually, we didn't have a lot of money in my family, hence all of the swapping around and selling your things to buy other things. My parents managed to save up enough to get me a Commodore Amiga, which you could get free software to make music for, which I dived straight into. It was called Games Music Creator, and then I used to use Noise Tracker, I think it was after that. But I had an 8-bit sampler. I was a milk boy, so I used to do a milk round every day at like 3 a.m. till 6 a.m. then go to school, and I earned like £15 a week. So I saved up my month's money and bought myself an 8-bit sampler. So I used to sample off my tapes or sample off the radio into the Commodore Amiga and make my tunes. So I guess, in answer to your question, definitely a technological start for me. And I guess my first music creations were made using samples, which happens still quite a lot to this day, although mostly sampling myself or my keyboards or drum machines. But I got to know loads of like really geeky people all over the world, mainly in Europe, but some Americans, and some people in Japan and all over the place. And people used to put their information at the bottom of their productions. So if you picked up a demo disc from a shop, you put it in to watch some cool things moving around, and some text scrolling across the screen, and some vectors and some good music. Everyone would be credited at the end, and you'd contact each other or you'd send each other discs through the post. I just got to know this guy called Dan Scott really well. He's from the south of England, and he ended up getting a job at Core Design. I was still making music all the way through this, so going to school, doing my milk round, going to school, doing my milk round, making music, staying up late, going to school, total geek, absolute super geek. And Dan got a job at Core Design here in Derby, where I still live, and they needed an in-house musician. So they asked me to come down for an interview, and I got the job on the day, and I was only 17 at the time. So I left home a week later and moved to Derby. And then months later, my bosses of the company bought a JD800, Roland JD800, the big mothership keyboard. So I was at that point able to experiment and experience a little bit more, and also sample myself into my Commodore Amiga, because I was still using the Amiga because we were making Amiga games, Atari ST games, PC games. They were all using modules, which was the output format of the music that we were making. That's really, really like a long time ago. And it was funny. So, it grew from then, and then got a couple more, and then started to use MIDI. I used Steinberg 24. I'm still using Cubase today. So it moved on from there to it was quite a difficult transition to go from everything in the box to using equipment and recording it to DAT. You couldn't just reload it back up and change a bit. It's recorded, done. But, things had to move on, and we moved into the world of CD games and things like that. And a few years later, the company was much bigger. Obviously, we turned around the Tomb Raider game, which I was a sound designer on, and then eventually was a composer as well. So that's been my kind of history of that. At the same time as doing the music at Core Design, I started there in 1991. In 1995, I started my own record label. So I was going to work at 9:30 in the morning, finish at work at 5:30, walk across town to my office where my studio was, start work at like 6 or 7, work until 2 or 3, go home, get 5 hours sleep, go. So I'm just a total geek, I love my equipment. I love making sound. So that's kind of the, in a nutshell, version of where it all started right up to today, really.
Yeah, so the technology inspired you to explore, to develop your own personal music style, and
exactly.
Really interesting. It is also I can see a connection because I could see similar stuff. My first synth was the GD800 as well. So yeah,
Ah,
the Commodore 64. So you're bringing me back to a nice
yeah.
moment of my life. Anyway, thank you very much for sharing this story. I have seen that you have collaborated with great artists. I think that it could be interesting if you can tell about a story that had a particular importance in your career that maybe changed something for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember exactly. So I back in the day, it was like 1998. I was recording on my own record label and on DIY Discs in Nottingham, which is a neighbouring city. And I was lucky to be introduced to a man called Charles Webster, who is a fantastic artist producer who's written loads of great albums and some amazing songs. And he's a very private person, and he invited me to the studio, which I was very lucky to have the invite, because I know nobody got invited to the studio. And yeah, it's really interesting. We made some tunes and we clicked straight away and became friends. And we're still working together. And God knows what, yeah, that's a long time ago, isn't it? 22, 23 years or something we've been friends. And he was the person, when I was kind of a few years into my career, that said to me, always do what you do, essentially from inside, rather than trying to be something or try to follow a trend or whatever it might be. Because I'm quite a bit younger than him, and he said to me, I think it was a really important time in my career, because I could have gone down the wrong route and be making soulless music and or banging techno or something that meant nothing to somebody, to anybody, sorry. And so he basically said to me, no, always stick to what you know. Always, you're good at what you do. You've got here on your own. Continue doing what you're doing. And I respect him for that, because even today, when I'm making music in the studio and I get stuck in my head and I feel like I'm trying to do something that isn't natural, or I'm doing it for the wrong reasons, or trying to fit in or do something because that's popular, I'll delete it and start again and remember what he said to me, so that I can let the music flow properly. And then, it gives you it gives an individuality to what you do as well. It brings out the personality of the person. And a lot of people have said that, I have a sound, and maybe it's because I'm continually battling with myself and trying to recenter all the time to make the music I make from inside, rather than watching what's going on in the scene and trying to be part of it. I think just to try and carve my own thing out is the only way I can do it, really. So yes, Charles Webster was, if I've ever had a mentor, he was definitely my mentor.
I see. It's really interesting, because what you said also as a connection with what we do, because we develop expressive instruments, because our SWAM instruments are not sampled. It's not a recording from another musician, but we want to give you the possibility to create your own music. So when you have the violin, the cello, you can create the musical phrase that you have in mind. So I would like to know what do you think about that, if we are going in the right direction?
I don't normally use plugins. For one, I'm surrounded by synthesizers. I really like to be able to talking about expression. So if I'm using my Moog, I like to be able to play the notes on the synthesizer as I'm making the sound.
Yeah.
I'm not one of these guys that will load the MIDI in and then flick through a plugin to find the sound. Eventually something might work. I don't think that's not writing music for me. That's guessing and hoping for the best, But you make such beautiful, happy accidents when you're being expressive with synthesizers. I've got quite a lot in the studio that I like for the reasons of they're all quite individual. I love the chord Prologue, Moog, Matriarch. I've got ARP 2600. I've got lots of modular synths and Fender Rhodes, Mini Moog, all the kind of classic stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't need to use plugins. But one thing that's really missing, and I do have some outboard stuff, was orchestral instruments. Now, I using like XV3080 or even, big sample libraries, which I don't have actually. I use a couple of string things at best. I never had anything that was expressive enough, anything that could give me an instant touch to the instrument like an analog synth does. An analog synth, majority of the time, is a mono synth. And with the SWAM stuff, it's, you're dealing with essentially the same kind of thing. An instrument has many different sounds it can make if you know how to manipulate it. And being able to, this is the cellos from audio modeling. Just with the modulation for expression and aftertouch for vibrato, it changes everything, It's more like the way I think about it is more like using a synthesizer for me, than loading string section 1. One thing that's never really worked for me in sample libraries is solo instruments. You press one key, you go, oh, that sounds real. And then you go, oh, that doesn't transition well at all, does it? That doesn't go from... I've got mine in duo mode there. It's just these little nuances that you get from the instruments that make it so beautiful to play. If I put it into mono SX mode, few things have such a beautiful portamento, Many of my friends that have been to the studio pre-COVID, when I played it to them, I was telling them on the telephone, you've got to come and listen to it. And they were like, oh, yeah. Their jaws dropped down. I was like, I told you. Not just that, as well, recently I've just done a song with Omar and a very talented musician called Max Beasley, is also an actor. And I've been investigating the pizzicato on the instruments as well, something I hadn't played with until and that again is just, and when you start to layer them up and move your notes around a bit, it starts to sound incredibly real. And also if you want something to sound a bit more chamber or a bit more like, I've only got 3 guys in the room, I'm making a bit of dance music, I don't want a big string section, I just want a few people to make it sound really sexy. It's really good for that as well, It really blends in with the kind of music that I make. Cool. So I'm absolutely loving it, I haven't even tried all the instruments yet. I've not even loaded the double basses. I got 2 stuck in the cellos, violas, violins, the flutes, flugelhorn, one of my favorite instruments anyway. Yeah, they just really, it's become part of my my band, I guess if you put it like that. I use these 2 synthesizers a lot, and I use SWAM on quite a few things for textures, little touches and things like that. I sometimes use a bit of the modular synth. I have electron cycles here, which is really cool. But the SWAM just fits in. It doesn't seem to get in the way. It doesn't sound stuck on,
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, because also how acoustic instrument can be applied also to different music styles. So I think that it will be great if you could share something that you have done with SWAM also to inspire other people, other musicians.
Absolutely. I mean, in the background here, I've worked with Saint Germain's percussionist, a guy called George Bazera. He also used to play percussion with so many people. He's very busy. He was actually the percussionist for Joe Zawinul for quite some time, from Weather Report, and be able to do like I like little flourishes, and it's almost like, you know, a synthesizer. Let's say. What's a good example? Let me take that off the MIDI channel. So I would, on a synth, for instance, I would little licks like that, you know, sound really nice. And I thought, oh, let's load the cellos in SWAM, and I left that one on pizzicato. It sounded quite nice actually, but I'm sure that's humanly impossible to do that. Let me put that back to Bode. So and that's only 3 instruments, but it just sounds absolutely beautiful. And then, you know, some textural stuff later on in the song. Let me just close down the GUI. The textural stuff later on in the song is really, it's very simple, but it's and if I was to put that into context, you know, you can hear to make things sound really expensive. And I'll play the introduction area here, where you'll just hear the strings drop in. It's just, it's very, I don't know, it fits in perfectly. It's hard to make it sound stuck on, because it sounds so real. That's what it's designed to be, you know, as real as possible. I still don't understand how you've done it.
Thank you. It's not my, in this case, it's not my, does not come from my brain, comes from the brain of Stefano.
One of the other guys.
Yeah, Stefano Lucato, that
very talented.
Yeah, that could think about the way to model and to translate the behavior and the physics of an instrument into a line of codes. And
I know it's crazy with all of the pipe work on the horns, in the length of the pipes, the even the mouthpiece, things like that. And you can, with the mutes as well, you can put the mutes on the horns as well, which is like, how on earth? And it's all modeled. When you see the file size, when you download the plugin and you see the file size, you go, surely I need more than that, you know, 15 megabytes. That's ridiculous.
The manual
that's
included with the 15 megabytes.
Oh yeah. Surely, I think it's the interface you designed that takes up most of the space, isn't it?
Yeah, no, we really love making those products. Also, as a user, when I joined audio modeling, the difference that I found out is that when I interact with those instruments, the result that I get is different from other people. So, and then the more you play, the more you learn how the instrument behaves. And there's a kind of relationship that you build with the instrument, like you make with real instruments, with a real violin or a guitar, because every instrument is unique and has its behavior. So you know how to play better, or how to to work around maybe some sound defect that could have. So it's for me it's a journey. I really like it.
Yeah, it's kind of it's perfect imperfection in a way. I've got my favorite settings on the cello for further down the range. And if I want something with a bit more sharp edge, I've got my perfect settings for the top one. It's just really cool, man. It's really cool.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we talk about your collaboration, and then we move it a little bit forward.
Yeah.
We have seen also your studio, your favorite stuff, and it's amazing. Thanks for sharing. Another thing that it's really interesting for me, and I hope for everyone that listen, is how, as a live performer, how you create a connection, how you interact with the audience, and what is your secret, if it's possible to tell?
I don't know.
To
it's quite
engage people.
It's a difficult question. I guess it's really hard one to answer because I don't think any performer can, without sounding like some sort of egomaniac, tell you why they're good at keeping an audience interested, if you know what I mean. I'm quite, I'm totally nuts when I'm in a club environment and it's time to play. One thing I do actually think is really worth noticing, and I notice a lot of DJs that I've played with, big names, and they turn up like 10 minutes before their slot. And for me, a club environment is something that you need to feel, because everyone in the club is, essentially there for the same reason. They're relaxing and it's time off, and they want to do their favorite thing, which is probably drink booze without being judged, and to dance without being judged, and to enjoy the music that they love with the same kind of people who obviously love the same music because they're there too. So I like to be part of that as well. So when I go to do my gigs, I tend to go early in the night. I like to see the warm-up DJ because I'm sure they'd like to see me hanging out with them, because I've traveled a long way to be there to do my gig. But at the same time, it's important that I feel part of the team. So to listen to the warm-up DJs, who for me are generally the best ones of the night anyway, because they get to play a wider range of music. To listen to the DJ that's before you, if it's a lot of DJs, to get into the mood, and also to hear what they play. Make sure you don't repeat any songs.
Yeah.
And also, to do your work properly. I'm not one of these guys that, will wait for the dropout and then do this to the crowd. Come on, you've got to do this. Get my hand in the air and say to someone behind me, right, now record. Here's the money shot. Let's do this. I'm not bothered about any of that. I want to make sure that my songs are in time, that they work well. And before, just keep an eye contact with the crowd. Look up and nod and keep be part of it. I guess that's what I do. I try to be part of what's going on, especially in South Africa. I prefer to be closer to the crowd than be further away, because the further away you are, you can't feel anything. It's a real removal of emotion, where, if you're really close with people, you look up, someone's got their head there, you're like, yo, like everyone's feeling the same thing. They can see what you're doing, and it generates a vibe. That's the word I was looking for. It generates a vibe, and when you don't have a vibe in a club, it's a dead space. And I think, it's like I said, it's a difficult question to answer, but for me to be able to be part of the vibe, be part of the team, do a good job, don't show off, make sure you know what tracks from previous experiences work. Also, not too much education at night. You know, people say, I love this DJ because he's an educator. I don't want to, sometimes I just want to dance to a song I know, you know. So a little bit of education, drop in a few new pieces of music or something that is like something to aid the vibe again, you know, to keep everything going. Also, it's not just about the boys, you know, you have to play music for everybody, you know, everybody's important, and soft, subtle music along with raunchy, like tougher music really, again, gets everybody in the same mindset, you know. It's a difficult one, especially if you're like known for playing, I guess, you know, proper house music or deep house, you know. It is a more subtle affair when you're in a club. It's a much more subtle affair. You know, we're not there to make millions. We're not there to show off. We're not there to be loved. You know, it's about being part of that team. I think that's the only way I can explain it. And maybe that's one of a few of the reasons that I can keep the crowd interested, you know. Although it has been quite a while now since I did a closey gig with everything that's going on in the world.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, because being part of a team, just trying to understand how the team works. So it's the most natural way to make.
It even goes to the people on the door or the bar staff. You know, everyone is. If I had a club, I'd have a team meeting before every night started, and everyone's on the same playing field. Keep an eye on everybody. Everybody work together. You know, help each other out because it makes your job easier.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you. So I have now a question from our friend Claudio Passavanti. Dr.
Passavanti.
Yeah. He asked me to talk about Giant Steps. How did you come up with a dance floor remix of such a complex song? If you can tell about the harmonic challenges or the production process. If you can tell us something more about it.
Well, first of all, we have to, respect Mark Tilley for making that new version of Giant Steps, which he appropriately named Coltrane. And when he played it to me, I loved it and said, yeah, I'll be happy to release this cover version. And I said, why don't you come to the studio and we'll do some final mix down changes and stuff like that. And Mark's based in London, which is about 120 miles from here, actually. It's quite far. And so he brought all the parts to the studio, and I've got the mini mode there. So basically, I didn't have to, and I couldn't possibly work out the chords for Giant Steps. It's too crazy. It would take me like a day to be able to voice each chord, so I couldn't do it. But one thing I did do was learn the melody, and it took me 20 times. And I've actually played the melody with Claudio as well, and it's an ongoing joke. He calls it going to the gym. Doing the same thing over and over again. You're going, just like going to the gym. You know it now. Just keep going to the gym and you'll get stronger. So I wanted to do something really simple: bass, drums, chords, melodies. That's it. And it sounds a bit, maybe it sounds a little bit Kenny Dope in the way that the drums they're quite fierce, because the song starts with chords and then it drops into just bass and drums. And I guess when you can do that in a song, it leaves it open to do whatever you want afterwards, because it's not such a breakdown. It's just you start basic. So the song starts with a re-edited old sample of, just a general bebop kind of boom, loop, rides, rim shot, open jazz toms, put through some valves, back into the computer, edited, chopped, moved around to get the rhythm I wanted, with the chords underneath, and a nice sine wave to kind of gently wash in, and then straight into the bass and the drums. It's a very hard split. It's like rough and smooth, and then when I brought back in the chords, it's like opening a Christmas present to be able to drop the melody from Giant Steps. It's like, oh, there it is. I've been waiting for that. So you have to wait for the right moment to drop the melody, because once the melody comes in, people are just like, yay, it's there, the melody's in. So I had to get it right. And if I was going to get it right, I was going to do it on something that was very iconic. So I did it on the Mini Moog, in order to make sure that we had the perfect kind of, I guess, vintage texture for the melody, rather than using the new modern synth. So it was pretty natural. It only took about an hour and a half to make the remix, because again, Mark brought the parts and we had the chords and stuff, and that's one of the only times I've actually loaded chords up and found what played them. I think it was the Alpha Juno 1 that the chords came off, to put a sound on a MIDI track, if you know what I mean, and record it in. So it was actually pretty easy for me just to learn the melody, and make some beats and stuff, and have some fun with a friend over a couple of beers in the studio. So yeah, it was. It wasn't as, I guess, the challenge was Mark's. Mm-hmm. That's where the challenge came in, for him to do the version before I remixed it. He kind of laid the paving. So I don't think either of us can take the credit for the song, but for the new production, he definitely has to take the credit for that. And I used what he had created to take it to the next step. The thing about remixing in general is you're always looking for another version that someone else hasn't got, or something that is different to something else, so that you can bring a freshness to something that people know. I already know that. Oh, wow, they've done that with it. Wow. And I love that when I'm in a club and I hear a song I know, but it's been reinterpreted in a really clever fashion, Mm-hmm. So I guess that's all we're doing. When we're remixing, it's quite good fun. You get to, all the work's been done by the main artist, so you get to really like throw things around in the studio and have lots of fun with it. So, the challenge wasn't crazy, apart from learning the melody, which again, Claudio knows all about that melody.
No, thank you. It's really interesting also because for me, it's also understanding better what a remix is, the type of expression of a remixer is really interesting, because you are with a remix, if I understood well, you are trying to use another light, another perspective.
Absolutely,
exactly. Yeah. So for me, it is really interesting and understanding that. Thanks. So I have another question. You mentioned about the collaboration with Saint Germain, and we would like talking about a little bit longer on remixes and the iconic Rose Rouge remix. If you can tell a story about that, or
yeah, I mean my my history with Saint Germain, Ludovic, is quite recent, really. Must be 5 years or something. Maybe it is 5 years. I got an email from Christine, who is Saint Germain's manager, saying that Ludovic's finished a new album, which was this self-titled album, Saint Germain, his recent one with the sand face, where they cut out Africa kind of shape from his plaster face thing. And they asked me to meet in London, which I thought was so strange. So I've been listening to his music since the beginning of my career, and I honestly didn't even think that I was a blip on their radar. I had no idea. But they obviously knew my music, so I went to London, and they wanted some advice about mastering. So I told them where I think is a great experience to go and get their stuff done really well. So I sent them off to Abbey Road to get the album mastered there. And I was lucky enough to drink copious amounts of coffee and sit outside a coffee shop in the summer with Saint Germain and with a set of small headphones listening to his album. And, the last album was Tourist, I think, and that was 20 years ago. So it's been a while since he's done one. So I got like one of the first listens to the album. And then they asked me to remix a song off it. And Ludwig's English isn't so good, so he was talking to Christine, and she said to me that, and this I'll take to my grave with me, this comment. Ludwig said to me, I want you to remix my song, because every time you do a remix, it's always better than the original. Although I could argue the point that that's a bit of a bold comment, I respect what he says, because I've done a lot, and I can understand why he said that, although my views are different, because I always love the original songs I remix. But I didn't realise he was a massive fan, and he'd been following my career since day one, which was just bizarre for me. So my whole experience with Saint Germain, meeting him in London, was just all a bit like otherworldly. I didn't really know it had happened. So I did the remix for him, and then he wanted another remix. So I did another remix for him. Then I started to do mastering for him, and then I did another remix for him off that same album. And then last year, Christine contacted me and said, next year is the 20th anniversary of Tourist. We were looking for remixes, and then it went quiet for a while. And then I think it was just at the beginning of when everything went weird with the COVID and coronavirus, they contacted me and said, we're going to go forward with it. Pick a tune to remix. So I picked Rose Rouge, because why wouldn't you? I thought that one, I wanted to do something different, because the Marlene Shaw vocal was just the same every time. It sounded cool, super cool song. And the way that Saint Germain samples is always very, very, very nice. So I wanted to do something interesting. So I retuned the vocal very slightly over some more emotive chords. And it was kind of, the song wrote itself from that point. I didn't want to do too much. We wanted to kind of, we were throwing files back at each other, trying to get the horns slightly more extended and things like that, because there wasn't a lot of parts for the song. There was only the horns and the vocal available. But I also then helped with myself and Cyril DJ Deep. We together helped bring in the rest of the remixes for the album as well, which has been advertised on the internet now, so that's not a big secret anymore. So we have people like Ron Trent, Jovan, Nightmares on Wax, myself, obviously DJ Deep, Terry Laird. So there's a lot of really cool people on there to reimagine his works, and it's quite amazing, really. But yeah, remixing Rose Rouge, I guess the funny thing is I had sampled Woman of the Ghetto by Marlene Shaw before I was releasing music. So it must have been like 1994 or something like that. And I've got it on a DAT tape somewhere. I must record it and put it on the internet. It'd be funny to hear it. Of this really like edgy, not great produced house tune with the Woman, I Want You to Get Together sample in it. So when Rose Rouge came out, I was like, oh, I've used that sample previously, So to be able to actually then get to use the sample in a professional manner, and obviously that sample is cleared and everything, so you have the total freedom to use it, was really nice, to have that freedom of, right, we can really go to town with this. This is not an illegal sample. We can take it to the next level. So yeah, being able to stretch the vocal out, to retime it slightly, and to retune it. That was where the work was. It was just microscopic shifts in semitones and stuff to make it just sound a little bit more evolving, I guess. It's evolving, so it evolves a little bit. But yeah, again, I could have gone this way or that way, but my little Charles Webster man in my head said to me, stick with your ideas, stick to what you know. So I just went down the path, and yeah, maybe I could have done something like this, maybe I could have done something like that. But what I did, it was what I did, and I believe it was probably the right remix that was in me for that song. Yeah.
I see. Really, really interesting. Thanks. And I have a last question. You mentioned about performing in South Africa. You have a special connection with South Africa. And what does inspire you about African music? And why do you think your music is so appreciated there?
I think, well, my relationship with African music is everything music. For me, for my music, probably originated there back in the day. And it's a very natural, rhythmic kind of feel for the body, African music. It's traditionally, there's a lot of African music is accompanied by dance anyway. But when it comes to like the musical side of it, I was always very interested in like West African jazz. Obviously people like Tony Allen, Fela Kuti, and the likes. But also my music isn't so fast. A lot of house music's fast. And in South Africa, one of the first things I know, I went there for the first time in 2011. One of the first things I realized, and one of the first things I was told is, don't play music too fast because people don't like it. I was like, okay. Yeah. So my first experience of my music in South Africa was I got a text message off Ralph Gum. I did a remix for an American producer and singer, Musaria and Saturna. So Musaria did the music, Saturna did the vocals. And I was asked by a friend to remix the song. So I remixed the song. And I had no idea. It basically took off in South Africa. It was being played on the radio a lot and DJs were playing it. It became a bit of an anthem for clubs. And the timing was just right. I was actually at that point talking with Julian Gomes and his cousin about their G Family music. And they also won a competition I ran for people to remix Love Someone. And they were one of the winners. So I was chatting away with Julian, and I got a gig offer, and then I got another gig offer, and I eventually got 8 gig offers in South Africa. So I did a 2-week tour. And when I got there, I was like, oh, well, I'm really excited. But the first thing we did, we went to a newspaper for an interview. I took my bass player Ross with me as well. So I had some company, and it's just a weird thing. Again, it's very organic. So we got there, did the interview, then we got taken to our apartment where we were settled for the 2 weeks. And a chap called Mankoba Sishi, who is on my label called The Gobs, was kind of our, let's say, like bodyguard. It's like, because you kind of need a bodyguard, which I later found out that day. And he's a really, really super nice person. And he used to work at a studio as a mixing engineer. I think the studio was called Jazzworks in Johannesburg. So we visited the studio as well. It was a really nice place. And then he drove me to my first gig in Pretoria, which was at House 22. So this all like completely came together in such a brilliant way. House 22 at the time was kind of the place you go if you want to hear good house music. Very smallish kind of place, but really good. When we turned up in the car, people were on this car, banging the car. And I was like, what's going on? Like, what's going on? Like, head down, like, oh God. Fans everywhere of music, you know. Then, so Gobs is a big guy. He had to kind of battle me through the crowd, and everybody was screaming at me. I was like, oh my God, like I'd never seen anything like this in my entire life. You know, I've been DJing for like 15 or 16 years at the time. And I played, this is where the remix thing comes in actually. This is a bit of a connect. So I then relicensed the Moments song and did remixes for my own label. No one had heard them. So I had the new version on my key. So I popped it in and it started. And as soon as the chords came in, the crowd was so loud, screaming, they couldn't hear the music anymore. So it was really, really like an insane experience, really humbling experience for people to feel a piece of music that I'd been part of so much, you know. And the rest of the tour was absolutely amazing. It was just, the next gig was great. The next gig was great. The next gig was great. Lots of amazing people. It definitely the best place I've ever DJ'd in my life. And there have been some good places that I've played, but South Africa is some sort of, when I landed on the ground, I didn't feel like I was away from home. It was a bit weird, you know. Don't really want to use the word motherland, but it felt like that. Like, it didn't feel out of the ordinary to be so far away from home, if you know what I mean. Whereas like being in Brazil or being in Japan or something like that feels really odd, you know, like, whoa, I'm far from home. So yeah, that was my kind of first experience. And then obviously I've been backwards and forwards ever since. And I've taken on quite a lot of music artists from South Africa and helped them kind of bloom in their career and things like that, and give them a bit of helping hand and give them advice. Hopefully they've had a great experience on the label as well. So that's been my experience with South Africa. I feel very close to South Africa. I do miss going, but I don't like to go back too often because, you know, too much of a good thing, you know, it gets a bit mundane, doesn't it? So I like to stay away and go back when it's important, and then we can all have a party together and listen to good music and experience nice vibes, and then go away, make some more music, go back again, you know.
Makes
so
sense.
Yeah, I've got a really nice experience to be part of their scene, that's for sure.
I see. Cool. I cannot tell you what I'm really happy about this chat, Martin. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Sharing your experience, your insights. For me, it was really 1 hour of a new experience, and I learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me. And let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, why not? I would like also to thank our sponsor Zoom that provides the Q2N cameras, and they are wonderful for making these remote meetings. I hope to meet you quickly, but I think that with this camera we can also make music and share it with other people.
Absolutely, it's an amazing piece of equipment. It's so simple and yet so complex. It's ace.
Thank you very much. So, talk soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.